Well, online marketplace Etsy reported its numbers after the close of trading yesterday. Gross merchandise sales up almost 118% to $3.6 billion last quarter. Now, notably, the company's sales during part of last year were driven by masks. However, in the last quarter, only 4% of the company's sales came from masks, and indeed half of the people who bought masks on the site in the third quarter returned in the fourth quarter to buy something else. I spoke to the CEO of Etsy, Josh Silverman, and asked him how they got those customers to come back and to stay on Etsy.
The most important thing is that the customers are having a great experience. So if you came for a mask or a non-mask, you're getting that item made just for you from a seller with a handwritten note. And that experience is different than buying, from some other place that feels anonymous, that feels commoditized. Of course, we are reaching out to them. Our CRM systems have gotten better. We're marketing a lot more so we can stay more front of mind. And all of that matters. But I think the most important thing is that our sellers do a really great job making beautiful products for the buyers and communicating really well with the buyers and delivering. And so more and more people, I think, are discovering that Etsy is just a better way to shop.
And this kind of brings up a point that I think a lot about, not just with Etsy, but with so many of the companies that are sort of digitally native and what's happened over the last year, which is sort of luck versus execution, or as you guys put it in your release, circumstance met preparedness. So you guys did make some tweaks, right? You improved your search results, you put more video listings, you encouraged your folks to do things like write those notes that you were just talking about. What about mistakes that you made in the last year where maybe you had to pivot or just change something entirely?
We make mistakes every single day, but what works well with the Etsy system, it's incredibly agile. So we're able to fail fast and recover and move on. About half of everything we launch, we roll back. 50% of every single product release, we actually roll back. But the good news then is it allows us to ship things very quickly and within 3 or 4 days discover whether it's better, and if not, roll it back and move on. And that means that the team doesn't spend a lot of time perseverating or worrying about small things. They're able to try things, experiment, and then keep moving forward.
So after masks, is there something else that's kind of come to the fore? Are there particular products right now that are really popular?
The really great thing about Etsy is that it is so responsive to consumer needs in the moment. You're right. Etsy sellers sold about $750 million of masks in 2020. It's hard to wrap your head around that number, particularly when there was really no such thing as fabric face masks as of February 28th or March 31st even of 2020. But every single day, something happens in pulp culture and it is immediately reflected on Etsy. A fun example is at the inauguration when Bernie Sanders showed up with the mittens, sitting grumpy in the chair. Etsy sellers sold $1.9 million worth of Bernie Sanders inspired merchandise, mittens and other things, within days of the inauguration. And that kind of thing happens really only on Etsy, but it happens almost every single day.
Yeah, that's sort of amazing how the folks there tap into the zeitgeist. So that sort of goes towards my next question a little bit, which is what happens now. Obviously your sellers really are pivoting, changing, adapting constantly to what's going on in the wider world. But what's going to be going on in the wider world, hopefully, over the course of this year, is people move away from their devices to some extent, right? Best Buy, in its earnings report, talked about this earlier this week, that in the second half of the year, as people's spending habits change to go back to experiences, maybe a little bit away from things, that their earnings might suffer. Now, obviously, Etsy, very different animal. You're not talking about big appliances and electronics, but still, I wonder how you're thinking about the second half of the year and that shift.
Yeah, that's totally fair. Look, during the pandemic, people have not been able to travel. They've not been able to go eat in restaurants much. And so a disproportionate share of wallet has gone to retail. And within retail, they can't really shop offline. So a disproportionate share of retail has gone to e-tail. And then within e-tail, Etsy has grown 2.5 times faster than the e-commerce sector. Where I have the most conviction, I believe that Etsy will continue to grow faster than e-commerce. It should. What's going to happen to retail spend overall, though, when people can start to travel again, can start to dine out, which I hope as much as you and everyone else that people can get back to, living a life that feels more normal. We'll have to see what happens in 2021 with retail spending and e-commerce spending. And there might well be a meaningful pullback in the short term. But what I know about the Etsy model is that it gets better as it gets bigger. When we have more buyers, that brings more sellers. When we have more sellers, that brings more buyers. There's a real virtuous circle there. And the number of buyers on Etsy doubled in 2020. There's more than 4 million active sellers now with more than 80 million items for sale on Etsy. And that has made Etsy a bigger, more durable, and even better marketplace, I believe, for quite a long time.
So I have to ask you a question of the moment, given that you all do sell things online, enable the selling of things online, which is about cryptocurrencies and whether you guys have mulled whether you would encourage your sellers to accept Bitcoin.
I've owned Bitcoin for the past 6 or 7 years, I think. So as a store of value, particularly in places where people don't trust their banking systems, in the United States, we are blessed to have a banking system we trust and a currency that we trust. Many people in many parts of the world don't have that. And so I think that cryptocurrency can be an interesting potential solution for that. I don't think it's quite ready yet to be tender. You need a lot of people holding it before it's actually useful as a form of tender. And so I never say never, but I don't think 2021 is a year when we would prioritize that.
So that's really interesting, Josh. So you have held it personally. What about the idea of it being on a corporate balance sheet that we've seen some companies going towards?
Yeah, I'm not excited about that for Etsy because it's far too speculative, and I don't think that it's our job to speculate with our shareholders' cash. So the cash that Etsy has on its balance sheet stays in very safe securities.
So really interesting there, obviously at the end, talking about the difference between his own personal belief maybe in holdings in Bitcoin and what is right for his company. Sort of on a similar note, I asked him, guys, about that Elon Musk tweet where Elon said, I kind of like Etsy, and he talked about something he had bought for his dog and the shares went up. And Josh Silverman of Etsy said, it's great to get that kind of interest, but he said he was also relieved when the shares came back down because he doesn't want that kind of speculative activity necessarily happening in the company's stock, which Brian Sozzi reminded me of you, of course, because you always talk about sort of fundamental analysis when it comes to investing in companies.
Yeah, good to see Josh being a regular viewer of our show, Julie and Emily. But yes, it will be interesting. It was a very good discussion. I am interested to see on what digital first brands, what happens to them as more people get vaccinated, they go back out into the wild. Are they going back out and buying things in physical stores? Do they buy less on Etsy? I don't think the vaccination of the world is priced into stocks like this. And I just, I can't help but to think if investors are properly understanding what that shift could ultimately look like.
That's right, Brian. But at the same time, I think it was really interesting to hear from Josh this notion of the fact that sales are really predicated for Etsy, at least in part on how many sellers they actually have on the platform. And when you have those sellers start to really have that commitment to a single platform, they might want to continue doing so as opposed to going to an Amazon or another website where they could actually list their products. And I think that stickiness on the seller side might be something that helps propel this company going forward. And I think that is something that the analyst community has pointed out coming out of these earnings results. But again, doubling revenue in each of the past 3 quarters, it's going to be a tough benchmark to keep up all throughout next year.
Yes, most definitely. And to your point about the sort of interaction with the small sellers, one of the things that stood out to me from Etsy during the last quarter, one of the initiatives that they did tied to Black History Month, they found this quilt making enclave in the South and then put a bunch of the quilts by the individual makers, the women of this town, on the site. And I think that they sold rather quickly as they also had the sort of stories of these women. So that's something you're not getting on the likes of an Amazon, for example, that is unique to that platform and an interesting offering.